Glitchless class tier list. I will be ranking all the different classes from S to F in terms of their theoretical maximum speed that they get in a glitchless run, how reliably they reach that speed, how often they can actually finish a run, how easy it is to actually play the game, and then my own personal preference. I actually had a real hard time ranking them like that, ranking them in tiers, because there's a pretty clear hierarchy in terms of what's good and then who's 1, who's 2, who's 3. But then splitting them into tiers was a little difficult. But we'll get the obvious one out of the way first. S tier, Fonewearl. Fonewearl is clearly the fastest, seeing as its time. My best Fonewearl time is some 20 plus minutes faster than the next best, which is Fonewearl. The reasons for that is it has the highest MST of any force. It has boosts to Gi and Draw attacks, meaning the second half of the game absolutely collapses. It has the fastest cast animation, which is the male unarmed cast animation. And it's somewhat reliable in terms of finishing a run. The only problem with Fonewearl in terms of speedrunning is it requires 2 Digger HPs and an HP material in order to reliably survive fouls at level 16. If it weren't for that, Fonewearl would be the perfect speedrun class. You can't survive Dayrola ever, unfortunately. You can never guarantee a Dayrola survival unless you get a Dragon HP or like 2 Diggers or a General HP, which I'm not actually... I don't think you can get General... No, you can with Redria. Never mind. Before Dayrola. And even then, you don't survive a crit. But that's true of basically everybody who isn't a Hucast. But other than requiring an HP material and level 16, Fonewearl is perfect. He's a force, so he doesn't miss. So combat's simple, even when you don't have great techs. And when you do have great techs, combat is laughable, because everything just dies. In at least, like, the most hits anything will take if you have the proper techs is 3. And you'll clear the entire room. It's hilarious. Now, the second one, it's obvious which one's the second best character. The problem is it S tier or A tier? And I feel like Fonewearl is A tier. Like, she's just not quite good enough to be compared to Fonewearl. Now, she does get the boosted simple techs, which means early on, she is easily the best character. Up to and including Dayrola, I would say, Fonewearl is the best. Fonewearl will, on average, outspeed Fonewearl until probably Mines 2. But then he'll start overtaking her with boosted Gizand, assuming he has it. Because you get a quicker dragon kill, you use less TP in Forest because you can use more Barda, and therefore fewer Foy casts. You have a more reliable Dayrola kill because your Foy is so strong that you only lose like 4 minutes compared to the 7 minutes that Fonewearl loses if he tries to do Foy 2. And that's with Foy 2. With Foy 3, you would save even more. So only lose like... I can't remember if I've ever done a Foy 3 Dayrola with Fonewearl, but I imagine you only lose like 2.5 to 3 minutes, which would be great. And she does have the second highest MST. It's only like a couple points. Here, let's take a look. Yeah, it's only like 2 lower. 2 to 5, depending on where you are in the level up. Lower than Fonewearl, which is a difference. And you notice that in the later game, because she needs a lot more extra help to use those high tier discs. Like the Refoy and Razan discs, she can't use when they drop immediately, where Fonewearl usually can. And she can't really use the higher level Refoy and Razans at all. She can use the Rabarda, but that's because Rabarda's requirements are so low. But she doesn't even really want to. Fonewearl's main selling point is doing the simple techs. High level Barda is fantastic in Ruins, and not needing to rely on Rabarda gives her kind of an edge because Rabarda doesn't always show up. even if you just have Barda 2, you're in pretty good shape when you're a Fonewearl. So she can reliably get through the game to the end, generally easier than Fonewearl because she doesn't have to rely on getting those Gi and Raw Tech. She still needs Gizan to quickly dispatch Volopt, but other than that, she'll be mostly fine. The problem is, in general combat, she's just decidedly worse. Even though she's stronger, she has a much slower cast speed. She's 4 frames slower, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it ends up being crippling. There are so many situations where Fonewearl can get away with a cast, where Fonewearl has to stop, reposition, and waste like 2 or 3 seconds between casts. And it's miserable. And while Simple Tech Boost is good, and, you know, when you're getting bad luck, helps a lot. When you're getting good luck, you're getting crushed by Fonewearl. Absolutely crushed. The Gifoy and Gizan techs are still really good, but nothing compared to Fonewearl's. It's an extra hit, extra cast, wasting TP, which you have less of anyway because your MST is lower. If you want to compare to even Gifoy Fonewearl, you need Rafoy for Ruins. There's no replacement for Rafoy. Yeah, 4 frames and 38 FPS is about 1/10 of a second. And that adds up, because you cast a lot. But the biggest knock on Fonewearl is definitely HP. Fonewearl needs 39 extra HP. You cast a lot. And that's at level 16. You're not even guaranteed to hit level 16 in a glitchless run. So you can never, ever guarantee that Fonewearl is going to have enough HP to survive fouls. She will never survive Dayrola. If you get hit by a rock, you're dead. That's just it. You need a dragon HP to survive Dayrola. And even then, I'm pretty sure a crit can still kill you. I like to say that given an average run, Fonewearl will make it to fouls before everybody, and she will never finish the run. Because she just cannot survive at Dark Fells. She can't even survive the HP drain. Like, with 3 Digger HPs, she still doesn't have enough HP to survive the HP drain, which is completely undodgeable. You can dodge Divine Punishment in this game. You can't dodge the HP drain. So being unable to survive that very clearly puts her under Fonewearl. But she's not the lone resident of A tier because Fomar is actually pretty good. He has problems. Not as many as Fonewearl, but not enough to knock him down into B tier in my opinion. Because for one, he's still a force. So combat's still really fucking easy. And he has the boosted Gi-Tex. He doesn't get boosted Raw, but boosted Raw don't show up that often anyway. Like, it's very frequent that you make it through a forest run with 1 Raw Tech, maybe. Gi-Techs show up a lot more often, and Gi-Techs are a lot more reliable. Gifoy and Gizand are your bread and butter in general, with a glitchless run in the second half. And Fomar actually plays them about even with Fonewearl. Fonewearl is still going to be a bit stronger, but Fomar has the boosted Gifoy and boosted Gizand, and most importantly, he has the male cast and animation. So he doesn't suffer from the same combat problems that Fonewearl has. What he does suffer is the same HP problems that Fonewearl has, which is terrible. He does have a bit more, but it's not enough. He still needs like a 4-slot frame and 4 Digger HPs. Bring that up. Yeah. He needs, at minimum, 3 Digger HPs and an HP material to survive at 16. At 15, he can survive with just the 4 Digger HPs. But you always want to play Redria for Fomar because you just don't have much wiggle room in terms of HP. There's also the biggest knock on Fomar, I would say, is not his HP, because Fonewearl is worse off. It's more reasonable to see, oh, well, I hit 16. I got 3 Digger HPs and an HP material. HP materials aren't that rare. His biggest knock is definitely the fact that he has the lowest MST out of any force. He can't even make use of boosted Gifoy or Gizand on Dayrola, generally, because you need 21 bonus MST before Dayrola. That's, at best, 10 from your mag, which you shouldn't be getting. And then another 11 on top of that. So usually, you don't even get to do Gifoy or Gizand strats on Dayrola. And also, because you don't get the boosted Simple Tech from Fonewearl, and you have lower MST, so you have lower TP, you are not getting the full use out of any die fluid you have. So even if you could use Gizand, you wouldn't be able to kill with Gizand. You would need 2 die fluids or to Death Warp. You can't, I don't think Foy 2. Yeah, you can't even do a Foy 2 kill with Fomar. You need extra TP on Dayrola with Foy 2 and Fomar. It also means that he can't use Rafoy or Razand when they first show up. In fact, he has to wait quite a while. Unless, of course, you have a bunch of mind units. But other than that, other than the crippling loss of mental strength, the backbone of the Force, Fomar's pretty good. Yeah, with all these drawbacks, he's still A tier because Forces are that good. It is impossible to compare to not missing your target. Especially when you have the fast cast animation. Like, he's made of paper, but it doesn't matter because you should never be getting hit. Who is in B tier is the other Force, though. Fomarl. Now, why is Fomarl in B tier when Fomar's in A tier? Despite being a Force, despite having slightly higher MST, well, it's because she gets no boosted techs, no relevant ones anyway. All of her boosted techs are support. The only offensive boosted tech is Grants, which she can't even use without a lot of extra mental strength. Because while she does have some extra compared to Fomar, it's still significantly less than Fonum and Fonewearl. You are never going to use Gifoy or Gizand before Dayrola, usually. Because whereas Fomar is 21, Fomarl it's 19. Which is still not reasonable. It's slightly more doable. You could conceivably get 2 mind units, like 2 priest minds, and then feed your mag an extra mind level or something. It's possible. Extremely unlikely, though. Because Fomarl is so weak and her mental strength is so low, just like Fomar. I actually didn't mention this for Fomar, but they both have an extreme problem with running out of money because they have to pipe back more often to refill their fluids more often. Their fluids are less effective, therefore they use more, because their techs are less effective, and then they need more money, but they're killing the same number of monsters. So it's not that uncommon for a Fomarl or a Fomar run to just completely run out of money and have to quit. Not that I've done that many of those runs, but in my testing, I found that I often ran out of money and couldn't even afford the resources I needed to progress. But they're both Forces, and therefore will still consistently get high tier times. They will outperform Hunters most of the time. Now, Fomarl's one good selling point over the other Forces is she has the highest HP. Highest defenses in general, but the HP is the only one that matters. She only needs 16 bonus HP at level 16. So that's 2 Digger HPs, or 1 Digger and 3 HP materials. And she only needs 21 at 15, so even if she doesn't get the extra level, which she probably won't, since if you're on a good run, she's not going to kill very many things. You don't want to waste your time fighting extras, because she's just a lot weaker than her peers. It'll take more casts, and it'll take more time, more fluids, more going back. But at 15, she can get away with 2 Diggers and 1 HP material. Same as Fonum at 16. I think that about covers Fomarl. She's not that interesting, unfortunately. Oh, did I mention slow cast speed? Slow cast speed. Same as Fonewearl. Then again, I haven't actually timed all of Fomarl's cast animations, so maybe there's one that's fast. Yeah, you can't curse the list. You've already cursed once. But that's enough with the Forces. Forces are all the top 4 classes easy. The only issue they have is finishing runs, and That's fine, because when they do finish runs, they're almost always better than any hunter or ranger run. Almost. But next best hunter, I would say, is Hucaseal. Only slightly worse than the Fomarl. Reasons: has the highest ATA of any of the hunters. In fact, it's almost comparable to the low-end rangers. It's not quite there, but it's high enough. And her dagger animation is amazing. You can safely do the complete combo on sharks and dominions, which is fantastic. Wow, Pigeon. Wow. She's also the only hunter that gets to equip brand, sword, and autogun before Dayrola, if you get a night power. You only need one. You're welcome. But you only need one. And as we've seen in my runs, you know, you just throw on a Pinkle and most of the time you come away with a night power. But most, like, the number one reason that Hucaseal, and I'm sure you can guess what the next one is, Hucast, are above everybody else is traps. Traps are really fucking good. Traps in ruins in particular are your best way of dealing with waves. Confused traps are your best damage output as a hunter. Like, you can get a nice partisan, you can get a nice, like, elemental shot as a weapon, as a ranger. Confused traps are still your best way of dealing with damage because there is no risk to you. And the enemies do a lot of damage. Also worth mentioning is, unlike all the forces, Hucaseal never has any issue with surviving Fouls or Dayrola. You can occasionally die to a bad rock crit from Dayrola, but other than that, you should never ever die as a Hunewearl. Hunewearl? Hucaseal. Ugh. What a terrible tongue slip. Now, while she does get the option of having an autogun before Dayrola, she can't guarantee having both an autogun or a brand at Dayrola because she needs a night power. So you have to choose. Do you want to take the chance on the night power, or do you want to guarantee the brand? Also, the same applies to getting a partisan at 13. She can't actually equip a partisan at level 13, which is the level that you get early in Ruins 1, unless you have a night power, or you pour a bunch of power into your mag. Which can be devastating. Like, if you don't get a night power, you are left kind of high and dry. Unless you have a fire dagger and, like, a really good sword. Because partisan is super important for Ruins. And the other two hunters don't have to worry about that. And her IATA means she can equip Lockgun, but it isn't likely. She is probably not going to get it. Unless she is investing heavily into the ATA, and even then she still needs like one unit to equip it. Now, it helps a lot in the end, like in Ruins 3 and in Fowl's fight, but it's not guaranteed. And while she does have a good saber animation, dagger animation, her saber animation is quite bad. So if you don't get any good daggers for caves, her caves end up being the worst. Similarly, having just a brand instead of having knives for Ruins, kinda miserable. Now, most of your Ruins combat has been done with a partisan, but as I said, she doesn't always have the option of having partisan immediately. In fact, at level 12, she almost never has it. So she's stuck with maybe a brand instead of knives, and having limited options, not that great. Also worth noting, she can't equip a Buster without, I think it's 2 power units. Maybe even 3? I believe it's 2. Now again, with her better dagger animation, some nice knives end up out DPSing a bad Buster anyway. But it's good to have the option, because the burst power of a Buster is unmatched for hunters. One other thing, not that important, but she actually gets 1 less freeze and confuse trap compared to Hucast. And I just said, traps are really good and your best option in the late game, which is exactly where the extra trap pops up. But we'll go ahead and plop Hucast down and also beats here. Same deal. He has traps. He has the most traps. He has the highest ATP of any hunter, but you all knew that. Unlike Hucaseal and also Humar, he never ever has to worry about equipping weapons. At 7, he can equip a brand without any boost. He doesn't even need a power level in his mag. He just has a brand. Partisan, always at 11 with 3 bonus ATP, which is just 2 power levels, which you should have at that point. Even if you're investing only into ATA, if you're spamming antidotes, you should have 2 bonus ATP at that point. You get Buster at 15 with only 5 bonus ATP. That's just 1 night power. And you can even get it at 14 with 12. And that's the earliest level that you could be at in Ruins 2 when Busters start dropping. So theoretically, Hucast can have a Buster from the moment it drops in the first room of Ruins 2. He can even use a Gigish, which isn't great, but it's usable, and it's more damage than a Partisan. There are situations where using a Freeze Trap and a Gigish is significantly faster than trying to just safe combo with a Partisan. And I mentioned it with the Hucaseal. Female Saber animation's really bad. Male Saber animation, though, really good, really safe, really fast. And you are always going to have some kind of saber weapon, whereas you are not always going to have some kind of dagger weapon. You can safely do a normal heavy combo on evils, on sharks. You can very easily normal heavy kill chicks. Your positioning is not even that important. You can just combo kill them, normal heavy. It's great. And just like Hucaseal, Hucast always survives Fouls and Dayrola. Problem is, while I said that you can reliably normal heavy and normal heavy, that requires you don't miss. Hucast misses a lot. Hucast has the second lowest ATA of the hunters. And if you've ever played a Hucast, you're very familiar with the big red miss, because it comes up almost every combo. Like, sure, you never have any trouble equipping weapons, but you do have a lot of trouble actually landing the hits. Speaking of, daggers. Daggers have lower ATA than sabers. But theoretically, you can combo kill easily with daggers, whereas you can't really combo kill in caves with a saber, unless your saber is godly, or is a brand, in which case you're in caves 3 and it's not that important. Hucasts and everybody's who isn't a Hucaseal dagger animation is just not good. In order to safely combo, you have to cancel an attack, which means you're throwing away like 9 to 12 damage right from the get-go. It also means knives not really relevant, so even if you get good knives, they're not great compared to with Hucaseal. Especially since you're going to be hitting less often with them. Yeah, if you could hit a heavy attack in the first attack, you'd be fine, but no, that's not happening. Speaking of not happening, autogun. Forget lock gun. Hucast can't even equip autogun unless you get arm units. And arm units are a great boon to Hucast, but you're not going to count on that. So you're stuck with just a base handgun for the entirety of the run if you want a ranged weapon. You can use slicers, but their ATA isn't great either. You should just be gathering them up and using a confused trap and a partisan anyway. Still, when you actually hit something with Hucast, Hucast is fantastic. Next up, we have Humar, sitting in the top of C tier. I went back and forth with the top of C tier, but ultimately I decided Humar is just way too reliable. You know how, like, in a game, there's always that one character that they say is the jack of all trades but the master of none, and they're usually wrong? In this case, they're actually right. When it comes to the speedrun, at least, because when everybody knows, later in Ultimate, Humar's basically just the jack of nothing. and the master of absolutely nothing. But in normal mode, he's actually the jack of all trades. He can actually build his mag in like several different ways and still come out on top. Like you can use 3 POW, 2 Dex, 2 Mind, guarantee a brand and Foy 2. Or you can do, 1 POW, 4 Dex, 2 Mind, guarantee a brand with a Night Power, guarantee Foy 2, and guarantee auto gun at 10, I think it is. Just the jack off. Where was I? Right. Well, equipping an auto gun in 10. Hucaseal gets it at 7, but Humar does have the second highest ATA of the hunters, which is extremely important because that means he misses less than Hucast. He does have higher ATP than Hucaseal, so he has less issue equipping brands, busters, partisans. Like you only need I have it here, don't I? Yeah. At 16, you only need 12 bonus ATP, which is two power units and your mag to equip a buster. You can get partisan at even 11 with 2 night powers. With 1, you can get it at 12, which is what you'll be at post fall opt. Oh, thanks, Nova. No, just like Hucast, he has the good saber animation, bad dagger animation, unfortunately, but the saber is the more reliable of the two anyway. And his MST is actually high enough where he can use techs. Can you believe it? A hunter can actually use techs effectively. He can get Bardo 1 at 3, which means he could have it for the dragon if it drops. You're never going to buy it, but he can have it. He gets Foy 1 at 4, which means you can use Foy in caves, which you should, because Foy doesn't miss, and it's ranged. You got to make good use of that. You can get Zond 1 as well at level 4 if you have 1 mind level. Otherwise, you have to get it at 5. Foy 2 and Bardo 2, both at 7, so you can use Foy 2 for Deirolo, which you should, because throwing out Foy when you can get a free hit that your melee attacks are never going to hit is a free 44 damage, and that's fantastic. You can even get Bardo 3 at level 14 with no investment, which is fantastic for Del Sabers. Having a no miss, goes through shields, never have to worry about really positioning against Del Sabers is a godsend for Humar. Theoretically, you could use Gizan and Gifoy in the late game, but you need a lot of bonus MST for that. You should never ever count on that. Which brings us to the downsides of Humar. While he can do everything, you kind of have to focus on one thing if you want to do it. You can't guarantee, like I mentioned earlier, Brand Foy 2 and Autogun as soon as possible. You have to choose Brand and Foy 2 or Brand Foy 2 plus Night Power with Autogun. You're never going to get a lock gun without, I think, 2 units. It has to be at least 1 base marksman arm. Your ATP isn't quite high enough to equip Partisan guaranteed at Ruins without boosts from units. Your ATP isn't good enough for Buster without boosts from units. Your MST isn't quite good enough to use all the techs you want to use. And your TP is so low that you have to type... You're going to burn through any fluids you have pretty quickly if you're relying on techs for damage. Now, that doesn't usually become an issue, but it has before. Where... Sorry, I got interrupted. It has before, where I've just run out of TP, and I've wanted to pipe back, but you can't really justify going back as Humar. Because it's just a waste of time. Like, your techs are great, but they're not the focus. Ultimately, the melee damage is the focus. Which is another thing. Humar's defensive stats are actually pretty bad. Like, he has more HP than Hucaseal, and will always survive fouls, and and Dayrola because of that, but his defense stat is actually much lower. And that actually makes a difference, because sometimes during combat, Hucaseal and Hucast will stand up through an attack and Humar will just get knocked on his ass. And every time you get knocked down, it's like a 5-second time loss, and that shit adds up. Which is why, ultimately, Humar's just below. Also, probably the number one thing, putting him in C tier where the other two are in B tier, traps. He doesn't have them. Techs are great, but traps are better. Now, this is the other one that could go above, but ultimately I decided to put him underneath Humar. Mr. Racast. Any ranger could theoretically outspeed any hunter on any given run. But in order for a ranger to go fast, they have to get weapons. They have to get elemental weapons as fast as possible. Otherwise, they are completely useless. And that's where the reliability comes in. Reliability hitting his max speed, basically non-existent. Reliability in finishing a run, basically non-existent. Because not only does he have the issue of actually finding weapons to do damage, he also has the HP issue. Now, it's not as bad as some of the forces, but it's still there, which isn't present in any of the hunters. So he gets slotted under Humar. That said, he's my second best time that isn't a force. In fact, he's faster than my Fomarl. And that's because Racast is really good. He has the highest ATP of any ranger, which means he can actually use sabers, both saber and brand, in a reliable fashion, and he has the mail animation to do it. So even if he doesn't get an elemental gun right after the dragon, he can play in caves for a little while with his good saber animation, good ATA, and good ATP, and not suffer immensely for it. Not as much as the other three rangers anyway. His ATA is also high enough that he doesn't have to worry about equipping weapons. He can equip basically everything right as it drops, as long as you're staying on top of feeding your mag, which you should be. Feeding your mag is extremely important. Every ATA point counts for a ranger. Most importantly, he has traps. Remember those? Those are really good. You don't even need a shot as a ranger if you have traps, because again, you can do 10 damage with your shot heavy, or you can drop a confuse trap and have the enemies do 40. You know, your choice. I feel like one's pretty obvious, but you can do that. Now, compared to the other rangers, Racast has it easy because he only needs 1 digger HP to survive fouls at 16, and 1 digger and 2 HP mats to survive at 15. Which is honestly quite tame for what is supposed to be a flimsy ranged class. But he still does need the bonus, where the hunters above him do not. Now, bad things about Racast, he has the second lowest ATA of the rangers, so theoretically, both Racaseal and Ramar, on average, assuming they all get, the HP they need and the same really good weapons, Racaseal and Ramar are going to hit more often with their specials and therefore are going to go faster. But that's really unlikely, and there's not that big of a difference between the three of them. Most of what makes Racast bad is the fact that he's a ranger, and therefore requires the elemental weapons. He also has low defensive stats. His HP is the highest of any ranger, but his defense is pathetically low. So oftentimes, his high HP is completely mitigated by that, and he's getting knocked down all the time. And unlike the other ones, because he's so reliable with a saber, he'll actually be in melee range sometimes, so he will actually take hits and actually lose time, just like Humar. That's why they sit in the same tier. I could, on a different day, go like that, say Racast is above Humar, but ultimately he's just not reliable enough. More reliable than any of the other rangers, like Racaseal, for example. I feel like there is a clear gap between Racast and Racaseal in terms of reliability. I mentioned that theoretically Racaseal will go faster, than Racast. But that's based on actually getting the elemental weapons first thing. In the event that you don't, Racast is much better. Otherwise, Racaseal, pretty good, because she still has traps. She has the second highest ATA, and because of that, doesn't miss any of the ATA requirements for guns from the moment they drop. Like, Racast actually can miss the lock gun requirement if you're not staying right on top of your mag feeds at all times. You can sometimes miss out on lock gun, especially if it drops early in runes too. But Racaseal never has to worry about that. She also doesn't have to worry about getting knocked down as much, because she has similar HP, but like twice as much defense. That said, she should never be in melee range because her saber animation is trash. She also has lower ATP, significantly, than Racast, so she should not be trying to do saber strats. Like, you can if you want to, but it's just decidedly worse in caves. You really don't want to be messing with that. Now, like I mentioned, she has very similar HP to Racast. It's not quite as high, but it's enough that she only needs a Digger HP at 16. Unlike Racast, though, she needs 2 Digger HPs to survive at 15. And oftentimes, in a Ranger run, if you're getting really good maps, you're not going to be killing enough extras in order to get the extra level. So that slightly knocks her down beneath Racast. The bigger thing, though, is just being completely useless with sabers, because the female animation and lower ATP. So she's just completely at the mercy of the weapon drops. And while the extra defense is nice, again, she's never using it. She's never in melee range. The defense, highest of any class, by the way, is just completely wasted on her. Class that has absolutely no defense, Ramar. Now, why is Ramar in F? Even though theoretically he's the fastest ranger because he has the highest ATA? Well, because he doesn't have traps. He has the better saber animation, but his ATP is actually lower than Racaseal's. So it's not reliable at all. He has abysmal HP, the lowest of any ranger. Abysmal defense. I'm not sure it's the lowest of any ranger, but it's definitely down there. Racast might be lower. And just abysmal stats that aren't ATA. His ATA is fantastic, and you're going to hit a lot. Which is why, again, if you are blessed by the weapon gods, Ramar will probably be the fastest. But when you're not, which is 95% of runs, Ramar is terrible. He just cannot survive anything. He can't survive Derola. He can't survive fouls. To survive fouls, you need 2 Digger HPs and an HP mat. Same as Fonewmarl. Fonewmarl, the best one. I did mention that he has MST, I think, but it's not enough. He can use Barda 1 and I think barely Barda 2 at some point in Ruins, but he can't reliably use Barda or Foy at the beginning of caves where they would be super useful to help him, make up the fact that he doesn't have a gun. He can't even reliably use those because he has the lowest mental strength of any non-force. Of any non-cast, I guess, is the better way of saying that. So his techs are useless. He has barely any TP. But high ATA, which is why he's above Ramarl. Yeah, no E tier. Ramarl does have some things going for her. Like, she has better defensive stats than Ramar. Better defensive stats than Racast, actually. It hurts to put Ramarl in the F tier because she's my favorite casually, but she's just not good in the speedrun. She has a faster handgun animation, which is fantastic. It's generally good in general combat. She speeds up a little bit over the other rangers in that. She's still a ranger, so any gun makes her, like any elemental gun, makes her immediately amazing. And she has high enough MST that she can actually make use of Foy and Barda, whereas Ramar can't. So she can kind of make up her deficiencies in caves for a little while. And if you get lucky with mind units, you can even use Gifoy and Gizand, which I did in my Ramarl PB, in Ruins, like the end of Ruins. And you have to get 2 mind units to do so. But it's possible, which is not something that Ramar can do. Oh, did I mention her HP? She doesn't have as much HP as Racast or Racaseal, but she has more than Ramar, which is important. She only needs 2 Digger HPs. She never has to worry about level 15 or 16. It's always 2 Digger HPs, which is reasonable. You can just get those from the shop with a 2-star frame, which you can also get from the shop. But that's it. She has a faster handgun animation. She is not quite as bad as Ramar in terms of mental strength and HP. That's all she has going for her. She has the lowest ATA, the lowest ATP, and she needs to invest in mind if she wants to take advantage of her techs. So she has the lowest ATA even further. Kill shot pose, pretty much. She just has the faster handgun animation, which actually hurts her in the Volopt fight because she cannot stagger. It's like frame perfect staggering of normal attacks. So her faster handgun animation isn't even an overall positive. It's positive and negative. And just like Racaseal, she has good defense, decent HP, really good evasion, doesn't mean anything. She's a ranger. She's not in front of the enemies. What does she do to deserve this? She's just not good. Like, her ATA is so low that if you're not investing fully into it, you can't equip any of your weapons on time. You are behind the curve in terms of equipping new weapons. And you want to you want to invest in mind so that you can use certain techs, but you can't because you need to invest in ATA so you can use those weapons and actually hit things with your good weapons. Make a glitch tier list. Racast, power gap. And then, I don't know, frickin' Hucast probably. Hucaseal probably. Racast in C tier is where he belongs. He can be in the top of C tier or at the bottom. Speaking of the bottom, this tier list is actually a lie. Because there's one more tier. Hunewearl. What a piece of shit. Oh my god, she's useless. She is so fucking bad. But, she's not like, she doesn't have no positives. You can survive at 16. Fouls, that thing that everybody, all the rangers and forces have trouble surviving. At level 16, Hunewearl has exactly enough HP to survive, guaranteed. And she can pretend she's a force because she has the highest non-force mental strength. You can get Foy, Barda, and Zond all at level 1. So right from the get-go, you can just sell all your shit, buy tech discs, and pretend you're a force. She can get Foy and Barda 2 at level 6 without any investment. Zond 2, I think it's 2 mind levels, and you can use that one at level 6. She can reliably use Foy 3 at 11, Barda 3 before Ruin, Zond 3 guaranteed at 14. But to use it in mines requires a little bit of investment and some mind units. Still, she can do it. She's not very good at it, though. She needs 35 bonus MST to use Gifoy or Gizand de Derola, and your TP is so low that you would need several extra fluids to do either one. She has a more reasonable 18 bonus MST for Gizand, but again, even if you're fully investing your mind into your mag, you're at best going to have 12 bonus MST at that point, which means even one priest mind doesn't get you Gizond at Volopt. But you shouldn't even get 6 Mind on your mag, because investing Mind into your mag is extremely costly. It takes 10 mana fluids, which is 1,000 Meseta, for 80% of a Mind level. That's a lot. Like, you are not going to be picking up that many items. And that's also the resource that you're using to pretend you're a force, which you are using more of because your techs are doing less damage. Like, you're just a really bad Fomarl at that point. And if you want to pretend you're a force, you have to go back all the damn time to refuel, and you're losing out the time that you would have saved pretending you're a force. Oh, Rafoy and Razond are basically unusable. You will almost never hit the MST requirement for Rafoy and Razond. You have to get super lucky to do that. But let's stop talking about her as a force, even though that's probably her best. Let's talk about her as a hunter. She has the lowest ATP and ATA of the hunters. Both stats. Like, at high level, Hucast ends up being slightly lower than her. But low level, she's the worst. She can't hit shit, and when she does, she hits it for the least amount of damage. She can't use daggers until level 5. So midway through Caves 1. But you wouldn't want to anyway, because she gets the bad dagger animation. She can't hit with them, and her damage is terrible. So she's never going to combo kill with the daggers, even when she gets them at level 5. Speaking of bad animations, she gets the bad saber animation too. So even the reliable saber that the 2 male hunters get isn't present. The higher ATA weapon means nothing. You can't use a handgun until level 5, and that's with 4 decks in your mag. And you're not going to hit a damn thing at range with a handgun with Hunewearl ATA. You can never equip a brand for Dayrola. You need, like, full power investment or night powers, or partial power investment and night powers, plural, in order to use a brand before Dayrola. You'll never, ever equip a Buster. You can't use Partisan until the end of Ruins. You know, that weapon that you'd use for 90% of Ruins because it's completely safe and hits 5 enemies? That one, you can't use it. You need 20 bonus ATP at 13, 14 at 15, and 9 at 15. At 16, sorry. I stuttered. Which, you know, at 16, 9 bonus ATP, perfectly reasonable. 14 at 15, not so much. Like, that's 2 night powers and 4 power levels. And 4 power levels is a lot, especially for somebody who wants to pretend they're a force. You can't use knives. It's not quite as much as with Partisan, but it's similar. Like, so you're not using knives until the end of Ruins. And you will never use an autogun, just like Hucast. You can maybe get it at the very end if you're lucky. So to review, she can't use Partisans, knives, busters. She doesn't get brand until after Dayrola. She can't use a sword on Dayrola without power investment or power units. So she has to use sabers and daggers to kill Dayrola. She has to use swords to fight in Ruins. Swords and brands. At best. Sword, brand, handgun. That is your Ruins loadout. And then, when you make it to Fouls, if you didn't kill enough extras, which you probably didn't because you can't hit a damn thing, you actually don't have enough HP at 15 to survive. If you don't hit level 16, you can die to Divine Punishment as a hunter. It blows my mind how bad Hunewearl is at clearing normal mode. It's incredible. Now, to be fair, in the higher difficulties, she's very good. But we're not talking about the higher difficulties. We're talking about normal mode. And she is so bad that she very clearly falls under all of the Rangers, sitting squarely in trash tier. But I've ripped on Hunewearl enough. That's it. That's the Glitchless class tier list for episode 1.